we don't want your land, we just want everybody to stop killing each other. And we need to find the people, and you don't trust us because we've been manipulating the region for the past 50 years, and even when we've acted nobly, and we have acted nobly on many occasions in the Middle East, you still didn't trust us because we did manipulate on other things related to oil policy. We need to reset the relationship and start with a 10-year plan to say, we've got to figure out how everybody's going to stop killing each other. And we need to embrace those Muslims that don't ascribe to this crazy ISIS radical jihadism. We need to get them to come on our side. Nobody talks about how the president won't say radical jihadism. He doesn't want to alienate 90% of the people that are not the crazies. As a congressman, I can say it. Nobody's going to listen to me except you guys. So we have to figure out how to get the Muslims that eschew this violent philosophy to embrace us and to work with us to stop the crazies. So part of that has to be our policy in the Middle East overall related to oil in the long term. So Iran, bad actors, can't trust them. Have to be very careful of them, have to hold them accountable and hold their feet to the fire. And many of the other Arabs are starting to do that now, but it's related to the whole Sunni Shia thing, but that's a very complicated thing. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Start with that Iran agreement, which was, frankly, a disgrace. If everyone, I'm sure everyone here in the room, for the most part, has been following the issue of how that came to be and the recent revelations by Ben Rhodes, who's special assistant to the president, who said it was all a hoax. That they actually used the media here in the United States as an echo chamber, and they knew full well that it wasn't going to do what they sold to the American public. And that is disturbing on so many different levels, and if we understand what that means, the administration lied to the American public to get what they wanted on something of critical interest, and certainly something that is critically important to the United States and to each and every one of us, because it further destabilized an area of the globe that is already destabilized. The issue in the Middle East has to do with the schism amongst the Muslims themselves, between Shia and Sunnis, between Iran and Saudi Arabia as they wage proxy wars around the Middle East, and with Israel standing right in the middle, serving as the bulwark for democracy in the Middle East. So yes, would I have voted against the Iran deal? You betcha, absolutely. Would I do everything I can, once elected, to rescind it? Well, that's going to be up to the president as well, because there is no treaty, there is no agreement that was ratified by Congress. This is simply an agreement that the president himself signed and signed off on, which the next president of the United States is going to have to make a decision on. So there are those who believe that that was the right thing to do and that we bought ourselves some time. But let's look at what really happened. You look at the Iranians that continue to violate the terms of the agreement to this day, are testing ballistic missiles to this day, continue to enrich uranium to this day. And yes, our friends around the world, the UN has withdrawn their sanctions, which means we're alone. So the first thing we need to do as a country is we need to restore the sanctions. They're still in place right now. They have to be renewed. They're going to be renewed by the end of this year. But we need to strengthen those sanctions, and we have to take a strong position in two things. One, we have to restore and continue our MOU with Israel to make sure that Israel has the resources necessary to be able to protect themselves in an area of the world that is even more volatile than when the MOU was originally signed 10 years ago. In part because of this agreement. And then we have to reinforce our allies in the Middle East to let them know that we will stand with them. We will not turn and run, and we will provide them with resources to make sure that they provide stability in a region that is all too unstable. But with regard to Iran, specifically, the idea that we have this country out there with now hundreds of billions of dollars in resources that have been opened, that we have a Secretary of State of this country that has asked other countries and their banks to continue to do business with Iran, it's a shame and should stop, and I'll stop.
absolutely. It's wonderful. So my assistant.
Here is the official time. Can I thank each of these gentlemen from
Sit down,
organizing this? I would also like to sell each person that's married one of my songs. 15 seconds. Stop.
Okay, guys, we just threw, from the list of all the cars in the lot, we just threw one winning ticket from the "You Left Your Headlights On" barrel. It's a Nissan Sentra, New York plate, DNE 9778. So you might wish to address that. Going on to the next question. From Amreen Sethi. What changes, if any, would you support regarding legal and illegal immigration? Please also address the issue of refugees. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Very sensitive issue for me. Certainly, as the son of immigrants, actually, we both are son of immigrants. The idea that somehow we're going to deport whatever the number is these days, pick a number, 13, 14, 15 million people, is absurd. It's not going to happen. We have a responsibility to make sure a couple of things. One, first and foremost, to secure the border. Critically important. 2, we have a responsibility to make sure that those who are here peacefully find a path. And I'm not going to say the citizenship, because I don't think that there is the political will in this country and in Congress to deal with this issue and to deal with this issue comprehensively. If there was the political will to do it, folks, we would have done this, and it would have been done earlier when we had a president and both houses of Congress that were from the same party. But it didn't happen, because there isn't the political will to do it, but we can't ignore it, and it's a shame that we have allowed it to get to the point that it is. I feel very strongly, and we passed legislation in the state Senate this year, just a month ago, to hold people accountable, because if you are here and you are undocumented, if you are here and you are illegal, and you commit a crime, you need to go. There's no excuses there, and I feel very strongly about that. But if you came here to pursue the American dream, and as someone has relayed to me time and again, people don't cross borders, cross oceans, in order to collect a check from the government. They come in here in order to provide for themselves and their families, and hopefully to seek a better life. And so that is who we are as Americans. But we have to have a caveat. They don't get to jump the line. They don't get, because of the circumstances and because of the lack of enforcement and the lack of will in our country to have enforced the laws that exist. They don't get to jump the line and cut those people who have been waiting patiently, many of them for years, around the world, waiting for the opportunity to come in. So it's going to be a very tricky issue. I, for one, am more than willing to participate. I believe that it is in our national best interest to bring people out of the shadows and give them the opportunities that exist. I also believe very strongly, again, as I said, that those who have committed crimes in this country against others and who are here, undocumented and illegal, need to leave. And we need to make a priority of that as well. The idea of sanctuary cities in this country is a shame, because it is a violation, in my mind, of our own laws and a skirting of those laws for partisan purposes or political purposes. And I won't say whether it's a Democrat or Republican issue, but we have to be strong when it comes to protecting those who are here in this country. So that's it. I'm looking forward to working with others to address this issue. I do believe it's something that we need to do and it's critically important, and I believe it starts with securing the border. So thank you.
Okay, this is one issue that's very important to me, that I'm going to disagree with Jack, because, you have to stand up to the Republicans that are promoting this hateful rhetoric regarding immigration. This is the made a partisan issue. And I dealt with immigration issues when I first became mayor of the city of Glen Cove. It was a very emotional issue, same as it is now. That was 1994 when I became the mayor. I was 31 years old. It was my first speech at my inauguration. And we had one side saying, get those people out of here. And the other side saying, these poor guys, they're trying to come to America and live the American dream the same as your father did. And, they're even being brought in by the church that you attend. They're being killed in El Salvador, and they're trying to escape persecution and live a better life here. And The speech I gave was about that this country is founded on some basic fundamental American caveats. And number one is all men and women are created equal. It's not all men and women with a passport are created equal, or all men and women with a green card are created equal. It's that all men and women are created equal. And we cannot let this issue become an excuse for racism, which it has in this country, especially right now in this presidential race. So we have to stand up that people be treated with human respect and dignity, no matter what the situation. The second American caveat is that all men and women are equal under the eyes of the law, which is that, if you're going to live in our community, you have to follow the laws. And as mayor, as county executive, they said, we're not going to try to enforce the federal laws, we're going to enforce the local laws that we're responsible for. You can't live in illegal housing, you can't drink in public, you can't litter, you can't do this, you can't do that. But if you play by the rules, we want you to live the American dream as everybody else does. And the guys who used to gather on the street corner when I was mayor are now, their kids go to school with my children at the Glencoe Public Schools, and they have their own businesses, and they own their own homes, and they're living the American dreams, and their lives are getting better. Every administration, from Ronald Reagan to today, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, second Bush, Obama, this has all been allowed to happen. Everybody's yelling at each other and screaming at each other, and nobody's fixing the problem. And who's benefiting from it? Well, the agricultural industry is benefiting from it, getting a lot of cheap labor that's coming in and working for them off the books. And there are other industries that are benefiting from it that want to keep this the way it is now. And there are people trying to benefit from it. I'm not saying you're doing that at all. I like what you just said. But it is a Republican-Democratic divide on this issue. And we have got to figure out how can we create a path to citizenship for people to follow rules and pay a fine and go through certain steps. The idea of deporting people is crazy. And it's just fueling this hateful, racist anger of people showing up at these rallies and getting in fights with each other. That's very dangerous for the future of this country. And it may be this group now and that group over there, but who knows who's next. We have got to stop this hateful rhetoric from continuing in our country, and we have to live up to the principles of the American dream. And these newcomers to our country over the past 30 or 40 years, with every president, every administration being accomplices and allowing them to flood the border. Yes, we have to secure the borders. I believe that 100%. Yes, we have to deport people that are committing crimes. But we have to take aggressive steps to create a solution to this problem and create a path to citizenship for the people that have been here for years. I have a lot more to talk about this week. Thank you very much.
We have two more questions. That's okay. It was innocent enough. We have two more questions. This question is from Russ Berman. As a junior member of Congress, will you be willing to vote against the party line? 2 minutes.
Yes. I've done that throughout my career. I've pissed off a lot of people, quite frankly, over the years and paid a price for it by fighting against the party. I'm a Democrat. I believe in democratic values. But, sometimes the party demands too much. And we have to care about the country. And sometimes members of my own party say things that don't make any sense. Or don't do things to actually solve the problems. And you have to be willing to stand up to those people. And yes, I'll vote against the president when I disagree on the issue, yes.
The answer is yes as well, and obviously it has to be part of the dialogue. Having a strong personality and having strong views on issues means it's also our responsibility not only to vote no or vote against the party, but to convince our colleagues in the wisdom of that which we are trying to convince them. We had a very interesting scenario in the New York State Senate. We have a majority over the course of the last 6 years, literally by 1 or 2 votes. So oftentimes, those discussions and the ability to change and to influence policy, change or influence legislation, takes place in the form of the legislation that comes to the floor. Because unless you have everybody vote, you're not passing that piece of legislation on the floor. So oftentimes you see that. And if you look time and again at some of the issues that we've had the ability to vote on, they have been influenced by, frankly, members who have stood up and said, I cannot support this, and you have to come to me in order for us to be a positive change. We've done it. in the Senate. That is something that I'm proud of, and certainly it's something that I'm more than committed to doing when I get elected to Congress. Thank you.
We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to do brief closing remarks. This one is from me as the moderator, and I wrote it as we were sitting here. This is the last question. Okay, this one's for foreign policy. You both touched on various tangential elements of foreign policy, but considering Russia, Crimea, Brexit, the Middle East, the South China Seas, and so on and so on, what is your perspective on the global geopolitical environment, how it has evolved, where it's heading, and importantly, what you would like to see the U.S. do? 35 minutes, no. Let's keep it to 4 minutes.
Yes. We've had very interesting discussion here today on a number of different issues, but the underlying issues when we discuss where we are as a country, both domestically and overseas, I think it's important because, if you ask people time and again whether we're on the right track, the answer is no, and there's a reason for that. And we can't and shouldn't ignore that reason. Whether it's domestically, whether it's in people's expectations, whether it's the reality that we do have extraordinary income inequality, and yet we haven't seen the growth in wages over the last 10 years. There are policies that are directly related to that. The same is true for foreign policy. When you consider where we are in foreign policy, the reality is that there's a vacuum in the world, and that vacuum was created when the United States decided to abdicate its role as the world's sole superpower. It's a fact. And so in the absence of the world superpower exerting its influence, and I'm not suggesting putting boots on the ground and going into places and fighting wars, because we have resources available to us as a country that far surpass any of those things. So when you talk about the advances in Eastern Europe by Russia, when you talk about the destabilization of the Middle East, whether it's in Yemen, proxy wars, or Syria, and the consequences being ISIS, when you talk about the Chinese exerting themselves in the South China Sea by literally creating islands and bases and challenging the United States to intervene. When you talk about all of these things, there is a common element, which is a purposeful dereliction of responsibility, because we were, and still are, that force in the world that has the ability to create stability, and we have walked away from that. And so there is an opportunity to revisit that. There is an opportunity not to be, literally the person running around the world to paraphrase Teddy Roosevelt, carrying a big stick. That's not what I'm suggesting. But we are still by far the largest economy in the world. We are still by far the largest and most powerful country in the world. And that means something, and it has to mean something. And in the right hands and in the right place, it gives us the opportunity to exert those influences that are extraordinarily important. So we need stability in this world. We need stability in this world. It inures to our benefit. And I'm looking forward, frankly, to the days when we can restore a modicum of that stability to our world again. I'm looking forward to that because, frankly, as I mentioned earlier, as the father of 4 daughters, they deserve better. All of our children deserve better. All of us deserve better than to live under the pressure and fear that has become the new normal in this world that we live in. And that's a direct result of the policies of this country over the past 8 years, and it needs to change.
So the world is a lot smaller now than ever before. The internet and communications and even transportation make it such that people know a lot more about everybody else than they ever did before. But still, 15% of the people in the world have ever flown on an airplane. So it's not as advanced as we would think it is. And a lot of this, what's happening in a lot of places in the world is the new generations are being educated in very hateful rhetoric. I'm not equating these at all, okay? I'm not equating these, but I mean, but even the immigration stuff I was talking about before is like, hateful type rhetoric. The stuff that the Arabs and Wahhabis are being educated about is very hateful rhetoric. It's happening in other places with racist, hateful rhetoric against other ethnic groups and religions. It's happening in many places throughout the world, and it's very, very dangerous. And America was always the beacon of values to the rest of the world as to what made us special. That we're all equal and everybody's welcome, and we have to be very careful about losing that image to the rest of the world right now. There's a book written by Arthur Schlesinger back in the 80s called Cycles of American History, and in that book he talked about when looking at foreign policy, which is so complex as to which things to intervene in and which things not to intervene in, is you have two choices. You're either going to look at what's in our national security interest and make your decisions based upon what's in our national security interest, or you're going to try and address problems that you think are morally wrong in the world. If you try and address the problems that are morally wrong in the world, you're going to be everywhere. You're going to be entangled in every single relationship. So you should really only be focusing on things that are in your national interest. So when we went to Iraq, we were supposed to went there because it was in our national interest, because they had weapons of mass destruction. And that was the basis on which we went there. That's always been, has been for a long time an American policy. Go there because it's in your national security interest. When they found out the weapons of mass destruction weren't there, they made it all about the moral stuff. They treat the women badly, he's a dictator, he's no good, blah, 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 even though we've been supporting the guy for decades before that. So we have to get back to being involved in foreign policy mainly when it's in our national